to make 2 trips, but nah, never underestimate the power of a mother who knows how to carry a bunch of stuff. My name is Sarah Johnson. I am a mother, a wife. I am also a certified personal trainer and exercise therapist. And I also have the trifecta. So I have POTS, EDS, and MCAWS.
First time I ever saw Sarah, I just got out of the military and it was a small town. I was looking for a job. And there was this little cafe that was kind of the hub. She was a local there that, a barista that knew everybody. And so I approached her and I was like, hey, do you know anybody who's hiring? And she said that if I gave her my number, she might help me find a job. I don't think she tried to find me a job at all. I had to find my own job, but we started dating after that. 2 became 1.
Julia Gumpert. I'm a physician assistant. Been friends with Sarah for nearly 15 years. When I first met Sarah, she was passionate and active with her family. She loved to climb, trail run, hike, work out. She was super active.
Not just like physical activity, it was like the capacity to live, to do, to be. I would say that that's probably the foundation of a relationship. Beyond love and attraction and all that is compatibility with potential energy capacity.
About 4 years ago, I started to see a decline in her functionality. She started to complain, which Sarah doesn't complain. So for her to start to bring up issues, I knew that something was starting to change.
I always knew that something was wrong. I never had the energy that matched what it was that were my goals or the things that I wanted to do. POTS is an autonomic nervous system disorder. It stands for Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia syndrome, and there's a lot of symptoms that can come from it. There are millions of people in the United States that have POTS, but it also goes exceptionally underdiagnosed. The way our medical system is really broken up into so many specialists, there aren't as many doctors anymore that are really great generalists. So, POTS causes a higher heart rate in standing. Well, that's a cardiologist. Or it causes migraines or headaches, and that's a neurologist. It causes nausea or really bad stomach pain and cramps when eating. Well, that's a gastroenterologist. So, depending on what's going on, you're going to go to all of these different doctors, and you get a ton of misdiagnosis. At least I did, and many people I've talked to have. The first biggest symptoms I had that took me to a doctor for the first time were when I was 17. That's when I started getting what I now know are adrenaline surges. Then I was told that it was anxiety or panic attacks. I think I was on every single SSRI that is probably on the market at the time to try and get these panic attacks to stop, and none of them ever did. As I got a little bit older, things started progressing. So I started getting pain in my fingers and pain in my joints, and I went to a rheumatologist where I was diagnosed with early onset arthritis at 27, and then eventually it turns into fibromyalgia. I didn't have any of the markers for fibromyalgia or any markers for arthritis, but they wanted to put me on pain medication. And then I started getting really bad neck and shoulder pain, headaches, dizziness. Got sent to a neurologist where I was told I had a certain type of migraines. For a while, they thought I had MS. Up until recently, the average length of time to be misdiagnosed was at least 6 years. I was misdiagnosed for 18 years. So imagine having 18 years of your life where you feel really bad, where doctors are telling you that it's all of these different things, and then you start losing a little bit more of yourself, a little bit more of the things you love, I think with each passing month, day, year. So, first for me was honestly horses. And then I couldn't drive because I was having inappropriate releases of adrenaline all the time and passing out. I wasn't able to go to work. It finally got to the point where I couldn't be home alone with my kids because I couldn't go up and down the stairs. I couldn't walk without a walker. I was being fitted for a wheelchair until my world became the 4 walls of my bedroom and nothing else. All of these things that had been such a pivotal and important part of my life and our family's life, we weren't able to do. So with each passing day and week and month, we all were pulled farther and farther apart.
You're concerned for them being unwell, but when you don't have a diagnosis, that concern can turn into bitterness, resentment, confusion, frustration, conflict, because there's no explanation for what's going on. One day we're fine, next day we're not. One doctor says this, another doctor says that. That costs a lot of money, take up a lot of time. You think it's this diagnosis, and it turns out it's this diagnosis, and now you got to change everything again. And it became this kind of obstacle course of diagnoses that never stayed the same. You can start taking really personal, and because it's cutting into your fun, your expectations, the commitments you've made to yourself and other people, to your children. And it just started cascading into this moment of like, hey, I think my wife has gone crazy.
No one took her seriously because there's difficulty in medicine overcoming the stigma of the patient that constantly complains. Hey, I'm not the where I was. I wasn't the way that I'm used. This isn't me. We actually call these patients malingering. When they continue to complain about the same symptoms over and over again, and you provide them what's considered quote unquote therapy from a medical provider, and the patient continues to be persistent. It becomes easier and easier to ignore it as, a mental health thing or something that you're just trying to seek attention. And that complaint is overlooked.
The most difficult moment for me was when she called the ambulance again, and she was getting loaded up, and my kids were like watching this. This is like the third or fourth time. And they're loading her up. And this is before we knew she had POTS. But they're loading her up again, and she's like, I love you. And like, I didn't feel that. That emotional yo-yo, like I didn't have the capacity for it anymore. I've heard from other people married, like the spouse is like, it ends in divorce. So the person's sick, and they're not getting help and support because the other person feels that like, it's not real. And so you just see this marriage or a union or a relationship just erode, and it's because there's no compass to what's happening. And the spouse with POTS, their condition is calling all the shots and dictating all the terms of what you do and how you do it and how you feel when you're doing it. And that's a huge wedge between two people. To not only have a chronic illness, but then to not know what it is and blame each other for all of its manifestations. Like, that's kryptonite to a marriage.
From family members' perspective, I don't have a medical degree. I can't prove anything that I feel. So at what point do they have to say, like, hey, enough is enough? Like, this has to stop. People see you as this person that's like, oh, you're just bouncing from doctor to doctor. Nothing's wrong with you. They're telling you nothing's wrong, but you know that something is. And so you start to wonder if they're right. Like, am I crazy? Is this all psychosomatic? Am I making this up? Am I weak? I'm questioning everything, and it didn't stop.
As things got worse and worse, she was bedridden on benzos, had lost 30 pounds, wasn't digesting food, having panic attacks, not sure what was real. I mean, I could see terror in her eyes. The rock bottom was terror.
She sent me a picture of her in a wheelchair. And that's not Sarah. That's not my friend. That's not the mother, the wife, the athlete, the person that she was. I knew then that things were probably more severe than I could have even imagined.
Everything that the doctors were saying and all the different diagnoses she was getting didn't actually really fit it, because they didn't know her as well as I did, and they weren't listening. I started looking at, some of the things I had ignored. When I weeded out all the things it wasn't, the last thing left was this condition called POTS, which I had never heard of before.
He showed me this. He's like, I think this is what's going on with you. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, this is it. This is everything. This is everything that I've dealt with in my entire life. It took all of these huge range of symptoms that I had, and it all clicked together. And it was so obvious. And we started bringing it up to the doctors, and they wouldn't listen. I said, please do this test for POTS. You can do it right here. We don't even have to go anywhere. The doctor then said, well, we're going to discharge you. You're not listening, and you're going to go home. And a few minutes later, this male nurse comes in and slides the door shut and says, "Have you heard of POTS?" And I just started sobbing. I felt like, holy crap, like somebody hears it, you know?
The truth gives you the ability to like face it and to deal with it. And that eliminates a lot of bitterness, resentfulness, all these different emotions. Those were immediately eliminated with POTS, because now we know what we're dealing with. I should have listened sooner, but it was too obscure. If your spouse is somebody who's having a lot of different symptoms, it's easy to get in the habit of dismissing those, especially if they're coming and going. But you're missing a great opportunity to be a real spouse. Like, to be a spouse isn't just about like sharing the bills and taking the kids to school and then eating food and going to bed. Like, sometimes you got to be in the trenches with somebody back to back, and sometimes it's all on you, and sometimes it's all on them, and sometimes it's 50-50, but it's never 50-50 all the time.
So now I finally have an answer, right? This is POTS. That's huge. Like, I'm not crazy. I didn't make all this up. Like, there is something that is wrong. I get a referral to a specialist, and she has a 24-month wait list. And I still have no help, and I still don't know what to do. So now I have an answer, but nothing's better. And I'm just see this thing that now I have to deal with for forever while it continues to get worse.
I'm a former Green Beret, and before my wife and I met, I had done 3 combat tours. And there are certain situations where like no one's coming to save you. And I think in people's lives and marriage, there's times where the same thing applies. And so, you know, I just jumped in like, okay, well, if the ship sinks, we're gonna sink together.
My husband said to me, he's like, hey, you're gonna have to fight. You're gonna have to learn the difference between growth and pain and when you need to stop. But it is gonna be a fight. And you have to have this mentality of like, how do you wanna live? How are you willing to live? What do you wanna do, or what are you willing to give up? And I didn't wanna give up my freedom. And so I fought really hard. We started doing a bunch of research onto, were there POTS programs out there? Was remission possible? And the research showed that every single person that had POTS would benefit from a rehabilitation type program in some way.
It started as more of a practice of all the things that she had researched. She wanted to apply them to herself first to ensure the things that she had researched were actually going to work. That's when I really saw physically things start to change and mentally. Because not only did she have a task and a mission, she had an actual outlet of healing, something that she could pursue on her own.
I decided then that I wanted to run a 5K. I have never wanted to do something so badly in my life, even though I've never been a runner. That was huge. That was something that I couldn't do at all before. And so it was time to make the next big goal.
Sarah called me up and said, hey, I want to climb Mount St. Helens.
I felt like I had let a lot of people down in my life. And so it was an opportunity for me to be able to prove, not just to myself, but to everyone else, that I could do this.
There was a period at the bottom where you can't even see the summit. You can't see how far you have to go. Sarah started there, and then she got in that deep, dark place right before you stand on top of the world.
The darkness that I felt in the years before and leading up to getting diagnosed was all-encompassing. But when I took those last steps and stepped onto the summit, it was profound, honestly. Like this moment of, for my whole life, everything that I had gone through, everything that it took to get to that point, all of the pain, all of the everything was realized and let go.
To watch her take that last step and to watch her body just be overcome with joy and happiness it completely just filled the whole space. like the wind. Even though I don't understand the effort and the places that she was physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, I know that that was the true version of my friend that I had met 15 years previously. You know, like Sarah was back.
When I was on the summit, that feeling, that moment, that time was really inspirational because everyone that had POTS should be able to be free. I really wanted to be able to share that with other people because it was possible.
Sarah's program is what she used to go from valley to summit. And now she wants to share it. And what a beautiful thing, like to behold and witness as a friend and also as a medical provider. Sarah was my patient in some way or another throughout all my years of practice. And I had been the person on the other side going, hey, look, like you're complaining about the same things over and over again. Now I have an actual blueprint to hand to patients, something that I don't have to compile off of limited and sometimes incomplete information. Like now this packaged product, this packaged journey of healing is available. Think about how many providers now can hand off to their patients like, hey, you don't have to be sick all the time. There is a path to remission, and this is it. Not everybody who is seeking POTS remission wants to run an ultramarathon or climb a mountain or ride horses. I think that most people just want a return to life, to living, instead of just existing. Once you get to a place to where you feel good and you're back to living, it's almost like you put a geographic marker there so that if something ever happens with POTS and you have a flare, you've already seen remission. You know what it takes to get there. So getting back to a place where you've already been, you have the compass. Solve for POTS, if people don't know, that's the compass. Like once you feel what it feels like to live, then it gets easier to make that navigation back if something ever goes wrong again.
He's just like, I feel great. I feel great too. Not having writing as a part of my life was heartbreaking. It was really, really heartbreaking. And I'm just so grateful to be able to do this again. And I fought for it. I had to fight really hard, but remission and being able to be up on my feet and doing the things that I love makes every single moment of it just infinitely worth it.
SALT is really a testament to self-determination, to liberation, to being able to take all of the challenges and trials and turning them into something that is beautiful. My journey and the things that I've done are proof that what we're doing and what SALT is works. We've had an amazing group of people who have done the same thing, and then we get to be able to create these relationships and do it together. We are wired to need people around us, especially in a time where you're struggling. And so we built SALT around that mentality of the need for community. When you're looking at a life where everything you thought is just gone, to be able to work through that together, to be empowered, to be able to troubleshoot issues, to cheer each other on is so, so important. And that's why we built it the way we did. It's just been a really cool thing to watch these friendships being built.
We built this program, we do this to live the life we want to live, not just have life be a little bit better. Like, I think that's something that's really important. My wife has gone from somebody who wasn't fit, who didn't trust herself, who was always exhausted, to now somebody that, I'm having a hard time keeping up with sometimes. It's not that she's coming back, it's like a full version of her full potential. One of the challenges we have now is like, hey, well, what does that even mean? When life feels like it has opportunity to make your own decisions again after so many years of it not feeling that way, it's like almost overwhelming. I mean, I'm almost like tentative to even say it because it's like, holy crap, we've never had it, and now we do. And I think that's the greatest thing that this program has to offer is that freedom. The freedom to define the kind of life you want to live.
I feel better now than I did when I was 20, which, I mean, who can say that at, almost 40, that I literally feel better now than I ever have. I have POTS, but I'm not POTS. That's not who I am. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm an adventurer, I'm a horseback rider, I'm a entrepreneur, I am a lover of books. Like, there's so many things I am, and POTS, I don't want it to be any of them. I still have POTS. I'm in remission. I actually got retested just to see how it came out, and it came back as subclinical. So I still have it, of course, but I don't have those huge marked symptoms. I don't have that big illness. And so now we have the opportunity to just be able to plan for the future, to plan for it together. And knowing that I can be a part of it, the future looks like anything I would like it to be. Things that I've never even dreamed of were possible. And that's what we want SALT to be for you too. SALT is just hope. Hope for the future.